So welcome, board members and manager. Today's May 24, 2021. This is the regular hearing and regular board meeting for the Board of Water Supply. My name is Board Chair Brian Andaya, and I'd like to take a moment to take a roll call of the board members joining. And the following are joining by WebEx. When I say your name, please say aye. Vice Chair Fosprot.
Aye.
Board Member Nale Anthony.
Aye.
Board Member Jade Butai.
Aye.
Board Member Roger Babcock.
Aye.
In the room is Board Member Ray Soon.
Aye.
All right, and I think as soon as Member Sword joins up, we can note his presence for the record. Also in the boardroom today is Manager Ernest Lau.
Aloha.
Board Secretary Joy Cruz Achiu.
Hi.
Hello. And Information Specialist Stephen Nordstrom.
Hey there.
All right, and on the telephone today we have Jeff Lau and Jessica Wong, both from the City and County Corporation Council Department. We have Jeff and Jessica on. Did we confirm prior to the meeting?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So good afternoon. We are continuing to follow COVID-19 protocols. This is actually the first meeting we have board members in the boardroom. So welcome back. All right, so testimony can be submitted as follows. We were accepting written testimony until 12 noon. If we do receive late testimony, it will be noted and we'll consider. They will also, all testimony will be posted at the BWS website at boardofwatersupply.com spelled out. We also accepted written testimony by mail to our address at 630 South Beretania Street. That was also due at noon. We were accepting online testimony at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony. We actually are continuing to accept telephone testimony even throughout this hearing. The number to call is 808-748-6040. Again, that's 808-748-6040. Callers will be placed in a queue and brought up to testify one at a time, and they will be broadcast live as well. Unfortunately, we're still not accepting in-person testimony from the general public. Materials for this meeting are available on our website pursuant to HRS section 92-7.5 at www.boardofwatersupply.com/board meetings. We are also now live streaming on the website, and you can access that at our website as well, www.boardofwatersupply.com/live.
Chair, Board Member Sword just joined the meeting.
Thank you. Let the record so reflect. So on May 10th, 2021, a few weeks ago, an informational budget meeting was held and was properly noticed via the Sunshine Law requirements. And there was means to offer, or we did offer means of participation, including telephone, video conference, and of course, all of the board members were present. The meeting outlined the department's goals and objectives and the proposed operating and capital improvement program budget for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021. Before officially opening the public hearing today, I'd like to ask Mr. Ernie Lau, Manager and Chief Engineer of the Board of Water Supply, to give a brief statement on the budget that we are considering today.
Thank you, Chair. The proposed budget is for fiscal year 2021 to 2022, which starts July 1st, 2021 and ends on June 30th, 2022. The proposed budget is We've done our best to actually propose a budget that we feel is reasonable, addresses our customers' needs, and continues our capital program requirements. Today I have Raylin Nakabayashi, the head of our Executive Support Office, to provide a brief presentation on the operating budget, followed by Jason Takaki to talk about the Capital Improvement Program budget proposal. I'll turn it over to Ray to start the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, board and members. Raylin Nakabayashi, Executive Support Office. I'll get right into it. So our fiscal year 22 operating and CIP budgets are presented before you today. Our operating budget increases by 7.3 million or 3.5% over the prior year, which was fiscal year 2021. Our capital improvement program budget decreases by 14.3 million or 10.7% less than the prior fiscal year, and the variances will be discussed on the following slides. Our operating budget increases by 7.3 million or 3.5% over fiscal year 2021. In February of this year, the board adopted our updated long-range financial plan, and the 3.5% escalation of the operating budget is consistent with this plan. The capital improvement program budget decreases by 21.6 million or 10.7% less than fiscal year 2021. In September 2020, the board adopted Resolution 915, 2020, amending the CIP budget for fiscal year 21. And this amendment increased the CIP by 31.46 million. This amendment included additional funding for the Kalawahine 180 2.2 million gallon reservoir project, which was initially split funded over both fiscal years 20 and 21. We were unable to award the project in fiscal year 20, so the project was pushed into fiscal year 21. And the amendment also increased funding for this project and split the single project into two separate projects, the reservoir and the pipeline. And additionally, the amendment added the Lanikai Water System Improvements Project, which was originally scheduled for a future year, and an unplanned emergency project to construct a second laboratory and control center at our Manana Corporation Yard. Consistent with our long-range financial plan, the BWS does intend to issue revenue bonds in the second half of fiscal year 22, and the bond issuance is anticipated to be 93.4 million. Presented here are the fiscal years 2018 through 2022 operating and CIP budgets. As you can see, the operating budgets have consistently grown due to increases in personnel costs, material supplies and services, and the additional debt service costs from our bond issuances. The CIP budgets, with the exception of fiscal year 21, which was amended as discussed previously, have also steadily increased as we work to achieve our Water Master Plan target of replacing 21 miles of pipeline per year. Presented on this slide are the operating fund comparisons for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 as budgeted. Total revenues are projected to increase by 3.8 million or 1.5%, while total operating expenditures are increasing by 7.3 million or 3.5%. As I mentioned previously, we did adopt the updated long-range financial plan in February of this year. So we formulated our fiscal year 22 budgets consistent with this plan. Presented here are two tables from the updated long-range financial plan regarding operations and maintenance costs and debt service. The fiscal year 22 numbers have been called out with these red boxes. This slide compares the updated long-range financial plan forecast for fiscal year 22 with the proposed fiscal year 22 budget before you. As you can see here, the proposed budget remains 3.4 million or 1.6% below the updated long-range financial plan. This slide illustrates our total resources versus our total expenditures, with resources being the column to the left, which is made up of green, which is our revenues, orange, which is the fund balance, and red, which are lapses and adjustments from prior years. Expenditures for each year are represented in the purple column to the right. So fiscal years 2017 through 2020 are represented as actuals, while 21 and 22 are the budgeted amounts. So as shown here, since the adoption of our current rate schedule and long-range financial plan, the BWS has continued to bring down its fund balance. That's the orange part of the column on the left. The long-range financial plan did incorporate our Water Master Plan goals of reaching a replacement of 21 miles of pipeline per year and the financing of this via operating funds and the use of bonds. The use of bonds to fund capital improvements extends the cost of these projects over a longer period of time, thus allocating these costs to current and future ratepayers. Further, the concerted effort to use our unreserved cash to fund both operating and a portion of our CRP allows us to evaluate and pursue smaller incremental rate increases for our customers. We do not need to increase the rates to build up cash reserves to fund and pursue CIP. Instead, we issue bonds annually and fund the CIP with both operating funds and the proceeds from those bonds. The proposed operating budget is based on total operating fund resources of $288.6 million. As you saw on the prior slide, operating fund resources are made up of our beginning fund balance, revenues, and prior year lapses and adjustments. In alignment with the updated long-range financial plan, the BWS has been working to maintain only enough financial reserves as required by our financial policies. This has effectively reduced carryover each year, with carryover being the unbudgeted and unreserved cash remaining at the end of each fiscal year. You will notice that the fiscal year 21 estimated actual beginning fund balance has been adjusted to $47 million. Incorporating our updated long-range financial plan was a major component of crafting the fiscal year 22 operating budget. Fund accounting is not the same as accrual-based accounting, which is used in preparing our financial statements and thus determining our compliance with our financial policies. So in crafting the fiscal year 22 budget, we adjusted the beginning balance of the operating fund consistent with the methodology used in determining working capital. The fiscal year 22 budget was created to further reduce the carryover going forward. It should be noted, fund balance though is not working capital, and I will go over compliance with our financial policies next. So compliance with our financial policies is measured and calculated based on our annual audited financial statements. So the debt service coverage ratio shall never fall below 1.6 times debt service coverage in fiscal year 2020. Based on our audited financials, we had 4.05 times coverage on senior debt and 3.17 times coverage all in. Working capital per our financial policy shall never be less than 60 days. At the end of fiscal year 20, based on our audited financial statements, we are at 103 days. Our operating fund budget in fiscal year 22 is $281.2 million. This is made up of $75.8 million for materials, supplies, and services. $66 million of operating funds will be used to fund projects in the CIP program budget. $53.7 million will be used for fixed charges, $51.5 million for personnel services, $29.6 million for debt service, and $4.6 million for equipment. Of the $66 million of operating funds used in the CIP, approximately $15.73 million is eligible for reimbursement from the State of Hawaii Department of Health State Revolving Fund Loan Program. This slide presents the actual operating fund expenditures from fiscal year 2018 through 2020 and the budgeted operating fund expenditures from fiscal years 21 and 22. So you will notice on this slide that the operating funded CIP expenditures in fiscal years 18 and 19 were much more than they are now. This is reflective of the size of the CIP budget and the implementation of our water master plan to get to replacing 21 miles of pipeline annually, and the long-range financial plan, which planned the use of a mixture of both bonds and operating funds to achieve this. Fiscal year 20 was actually the first year of bond issuances to fund the CIP consistent with the water master plan. Previously, we had not issued bonds for many years and were funding all of the CIP with operating funds. As we continue to grow our CIP, we will continue the mix of financing between bonds and operating. In comparing just operating expenditures without the operating funds amounts used in CIP, there's approximately $7.3 million or 3.5% more budgeted in fiscal year 22 than there was in 21. The largest increase over fiscal year 21 was a $5.4 million increase in debt service, which does correspond with our updated long-range financial plan and our increase in pipeline miles replaced annually. And I'll go over the highlights of each category next. So there's no net increase in full-time equivalent employees for the department. Our department staffing remains below the authorized 741 full-time equivalent employees. For fiscal year 22, we did abolish 14 positions and create 8 new ones. These 6 unallocated positions remain in the department pool of 741 to be used for reorganizations as they are finalized. There is a small increase in salaries of $424,000, or about 0.8%, which is reflective of negotiated collective bargaining salary adjustments through fiscal year 2021. As of this meeting, there have been no negotiated salary adjustments for fiscal years 22 and beyond. So the BWS continues to hold its authorized FTE count flat at 741. As of the end of April, we had 188 vacant positions and 7 authorized but uncreated positions. We continue to evaluate organizational and technological changes to increase and optimize our operational capacity. We've initiated changes in recruitment and advertisement of our vacant positions by leveraging memberships in professional organizations like AWWA and AMWA. And we've been working with a marketing consultant to develop a more robust advertising plan for our positions. We're also currently working with the Department of Human Resources to expedite the hiring of licensed engineers. For material supplies and services, there's a $3.7 million increase, or 5.2% increase over the prior year. This is made up of multiple categories, but first, professional services increased by $1.4 million. Some of the highlights within this category are a rate consulting contract that we must do as we enter into the next rate setting cycle, lead service line inventory and water testing contract, environmental investigations, and the Baratania redevelopment. This is also reflective of an increase of $1.2 million in road repairs. So breaks on our larger transmission mains, which were predicted in our water master plan, do increase the need for emergency road repairs. There's also an increase in contractual services of about $535,000. This is reflective of increased wireless security for our reservoirs. We've also got a new budget category, which is PV maintenance, which is up about $480,000. So as our ESPC project reaches final acceptance and completion, the contractors turned over the repair and maintenance of the PV system to the Board of Water Supply. So this cost is reflective of our operations. And the recycled water, all of these increases are offset by an $898,000 decrease in repairs and maintenance to our recycled water plant. For equipment, there's a $1.9 million or 30.1% decrease for new and replacement vehicles. So while the fiscal year 21 equipment budget was much higher than the proposed fiscal year 22, we did and continue to defer the purchase of new and replacement vehicles and equipment where it's possible and safe to do so. In fiscal year 21, we have not and do not plan to spend the entire budget allocated to equipment, as many of the purchases are being deferred. The fiscal year 22 budget is reflective of our current plan to purchase and replace only equipment that's absolutely necessary. Additionally, debt service is increasing by 22.2% or $5.4 million. And debt service has been increasing steadily as we issue more bonds to cover our increased CIP budgets. While we have been issuing more debt, as reported earlier this fiscal year, we have been able to achieve good financing rates. So Fitch and S&P respectively assigned ratings of AA+, positive outlook, and AAA, stable outlook. This is the second year that BWS has received the AAA rating from S&P, and the AAA rating is the first of its kind within the state for municipal style credit. Additionally, Fitch did revise BWS to a positive outlook versus the prior year's stable outlook. Fixed charges have decreased by $258,000 or 0.5%. This is due mostly to a reduction in the amount budgeted for electricity costs. Again, as we near full completion of the ESPC, we're realizing savings from the use of the operational PV systems. There's also been a decrease in the amount budgeted for other post-employment benefits based on the funding schedules provided by the EUTF. And To offset these decreases, though, there was an increase in the amount required to fund the employee retirement system and the employer cost of health benefits. So total revenues are projected to increase this year by about 3.8 million or 1.5%. So this is mostly due to our metered water revenues, which are projected to slightly increase by 3.3 million or 1.4% due to our rate adjustments. Other revenues, which consist mainly of interest income, ocean cooling revenues, and revenues from water service installations and other merchandise and jobbing, are projected to increase by 410,000 or 4.7%. Presented here is a chart of the revenue budgets in fiscal year 22 as compared to the budget in fiscal year 21 and the actual revenues collected in fiscal year 20. The main driver of increased revenue is metered sales based on our adopted rate schedule. Other revenues are increasing primarily due to interest income. Presented is a chart showing the actual fiscal year 2020 revenues, the fiscal year 21 budgeted revenues, fiscal year 21 estimated revenues, and the fiscal year 22 budgeted revenues. So revenues of the Board of Water Supply, as you can see here, are made up almost entirely generated from the metered sales of potable, non-potable, and recycled water. Metered sales are greatly affected by use and weather. So in the latter part of fiscal year 20, the April through June period, and early part of fiscal year 21, which was this is all July 2020, we did see a drop in usage, thus a drop in revenue. And revenues did pick up again in the hotter summer months, which was August through October of 2020, as more water was used and the island began to open up again after the 2 COVID shutdowns. So as was forecast by the Weather Service, Oahu did experience an above average rainfall through the wet season, with above average rainfall recorded from January through March 2021. Water usage by our customers is greatly affected by the rain. So the more it rains, the less water our customers tend to use. And we're expecting usage and thus revenues to go up again as we get into the hotter summer months. So the forecasted revenues for fiscal year 22 are based on historical patterns and the increase in rates scheduled for July 1st, 2021. In summary, for the operating fund, we are faced with decreased resources, mainly due to the projected carry forward being smaller and smaller as we move forward, though there is a small revenue bump expected because of our rate changes. With decreased resources, though, we are facing increased total expenditures. So our annual operating expenditures did increase by 3.5%, which is aligned with our updated long-range financial plan. And we continue to increase funding using the operating fund to fund CIP. As we continue to implement our water master plan goals, increasing the CIP budget and funding it with both bonds and cash is a part of reaching our goals. So these two things combined do equal a reduced fund balance for the Board of Water Supply. And actually, as we enter into our next rate setting study, we have been working very hard to right size our operating budget, align it with our updated long-range financial plan so that we can make informed decisions on appropriate rates. This is it for me.
Thank you, Ray. At this point, we're going to have Jason Takaki, head of our Capital Projects Division, present the proposed CIP budget for FY22.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair Andaya, board members. Jason Takaki from the Capital Projects Division. The annual capital improvement program is our commitment to the future of the water system. The annual program is compiled by the Capital Projects Division and includes projects from all divisions and staff offices. The CIP supports the department's vision and mission and is aligned with the Water Master Plan, the department's strategic plan, and each division's goals and objectives in support of these plans and the 6-year long-range capital improvement program. The capital improvement program carefully balances the needs of the system in providing safe, reliable water service with cost-effective management of assets and funding. The CIP is organized in 3 project categories. There's research and development, renewal and replacement, and capacity expansion. This matrix shows the project categories and the sources of funding. Sources include The operating fund, as Raylene just went through, funding through low-interest loans from the Department of Health, State Revolving Fund, that's SRF, the Special Expendable Fund, which are collections of water system facility charges that fund system expansions, and the improvement or bond-funded projects. The total for FY22 is in the bottom right-hand corner. It is just shy of $180 million at $179,976,000. As we all know, the municipal water system is massive and diverse. This map simply illustrates the distribution of this year's design and construction projects around the island as we manage an island-wide municipal water system. So these are the highlights for Category 1, Research and Development. $6.9 million is proposed for this project category. R&D begins with an appropriation for the drilling, casing, pumping, and testing of exploratory wells in Kunia that are funded in part by the state of Hawaii in support of diversified agriculture. In FY22, we will continue our construction management program that provides additional field expertise and training for the Capital Projects Construction Management Branch. Finally, a study will look at water system improvements that are required to ensure the reliability of water delivery for the adjacent Newtown Ridge and Royal Summit subdivisions. The largest category in the annual CIP is Category 2, which addresses the needs of an aging infrastructure. A total of $121.5 million is allocated in this project category and includes projects to perform renovations and renewals to aging facilities. The 6 projects that are listed here represent a $35.5 million investment in critical facilities around the island. Category 2 also includes main replacements as we work toward a target goal of 21 miles of main replacement per year as prescribed in the Board of Water Supply Water Master Plan. Construction projects to replace 10 miles of main are included in FY22, which is precisely on our target as we steadily increase our replacement miles to 21 per year by 2027. Another 10 miles of main replacement design projects are also included in the annual budget for future construction. Other renewal and replacement needs include corrosion repairs and controls for our granular activated carbon water treatment facilities, a plan and project to address a backlog of new water service requests, and a long overdue renovation of the Board of Water Supply IT data center, which is housed in the historic Beretania Pump Building here at the Beretania Complex. In FY22, we will continue upkeep of our reservoirs and other Board of Water Supply structures at facilities around the island, while also continuing to upgrade security at all BWS facilities. Finally, in Category 3, Capacity Expansion, projects include the installation of a new recycled water transmission main from the expanded Honolulu water recycling facility, installation of granular activated carbon water treatment at Mililani Wells 2, and $17 million for the initiation of a design, build, operate, maintain project delivery approach for a desalination facility at Kalailoa on 20 acres of land made available by the Barbers Point base closure. This concludes the highlights of this year's CIP, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Members? Hearing none,
Chair,
yes, yes, Jade.
you mentioned about the design, build, finance, operate, and maintain. That's what we did with the HART when we went for the beach raid. And, that was we went for over a couple of years trying to evaluate it, but in the end, it was, outside of our budget. Can you provide more details on that? Is it design, build, finance, operate, maintain, or is it just design, build, operate, maintain?
A good question, Board Member Butai. It is a design, build, operate, maintain. So the financing would come from the Board of Water Supply to design and construct it. Then the operation would be over a 20-year period. The estimated capacity of the seawater desalination plant is 1.7 million gallons a day to feed into our system. And the operational period is 20 years. What we also have on this project is the opportunity for potentially up to 25% of the project cost to come from the federal government through the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation of the Department of Interior. Many years ago, this project was identified in a appropriation legislation introduced by the late Senator Dan Inouye with the help of his aide there, Chauncey Ching. So because of that, this project actually does qualify for potential Bureau of Reclamation funding.
You know, when I hear the design, build, finance, or design, build, operate, maintain, I mean, we spent a lot of time trying to evaluate that for art, and in the end,
yeah, I don't know a lot about the rail project, but I think the rail project is potentially many orders of magnitude more complex than our project is. Our overall estimated total project cost is about $30 million. And we hope to get it actually completed and operational sometime in 2024.
The finance piece is not part of it because when they were, you know, the potential bidders, it was not a standalone project. You know, the city and county was still going to be on the hook, so it was not a DBFON, even though it was, you know, presented as a DBFON.
That's true. I think that project was much more complicated than our small project.
And I have one more question.
Oh, go ahead, Jim.
You know, on the revenue projections, I mean, tourism and passenger arrivals have seen a surge of, you know, since the start of the spring, you know, with arrivals now reaching about 70% of 2019 pre-pandemic levels, daily levels. I think that's one figure that I saw was like over 27,000, which is, you know, compared to an average of 30,000 pre-COVID. So are the revenue projections taken into account, you know, improvement, you know, what in our major industry?
I will defer to maybe Ray Lin on the revenue projections. But Jade, what we've Board Member Butai, what we've seen in terms of the recovery after COVID-19 is that water use just kind of moved from maybe the visitor industry into our residential systems as people, you know, stayed at home because of the pandemic. But we've kind of seen the water usage and the revenue kind of track almost to the place of being more normal of what we'd see. It varied. Because many of the, as the hotels open up and welcome visitors back in, we can, then the people that work in those hotels will move from their homes and now work in Waikiki. And it's a good question that we should monitor what's happening in Waikiki as an indicator to see that the demand in Waikiki recovers. And then it actually would allow for more revenue, but it might be a shifting of the water use as opposed to just new growth in water use from residential areas back into the resort areas where the jobs are for some of our customers, and greater water usage with greater visitors there. So we might see Waikiki get back to more of the normal usage. But I'll let Ray help to answer the question about projected revenues. Go ahead, Ray.
Thank you. So yes, we do use historical revenue collections to factor or to project forward how much revenue we'll be collecting with the new rate increases. So we did not, I guess in last year when I came before you to present the budget, we did we used our historical data, plus we tried to cap that or be very conservative with the amount that we would project to receive because of COVID. That was not something we did this year. So we looked at our historical data across the months because, like I mentioned, the revenues do kind of trend with weather. When it's hotter, we collect more revenue. So we looked at the tracking of our normal revenue collection over the prior years, applied the new rates, and that's how we projected forward for fiscal year 21. So we did not try to calculate in a reduction because of COVID.
Thank you.
Wait. Chair, can I ask a question?
Go ahead, member.
Ray, we had a workshop a couple of weeks ago. Was excellent. We got the opportunity to ask a lot of detailed questions. So I don't know that many of us have very many questions this time around. I want to be sure, though, that what you gave us in numbers the other day, 2 weeks ago, is the same presentation you just delivered.
Yes, no changes were made from the workshop to today.
Okay, and so one other thing I wanted to emphasize is one of the things that bothered us the most continues to, and I realize that our people are doing the best job they can, but is the level of vacancies. It's 25% of your FTE are empty, and it gives a false sense of what the carryover is because it's like a savings account. But what we're more concerned about is that we actually fill them so that we're able to meet the requirements of moving up to 21 miles per year of replacement, as well as taking care of the normal CIP. Can you be sure to keep us posted? You've given us a lot of terms about what you're going to be doing, but we'd like to see what the results are throughout the year. So keep us posted on unemployment. That's really important.
Yeah, you know, it is an ongoing challenge, and
Sure.
At the request of the chair, later on in the budget, I believe it's action item number 5, to create a permitted interaction group to work on staffing and succession planning,
Okay.
working with us in partnership to try to address the challenges here, because we continue to work hard at it, but it doesn't seem like we're making substantial progress. So I welcome the input of the board in that discussion through a permitted interaction group.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Good thought.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, hearing none. I'll go to Madam Secretary. Is there any written testimony submitted?
Chair, no written testimony.
And Mr. Nordstrom, the phone lines have been open for public testimony. Is there anyone on the phone to testify?
No phone, nothing.
Thank you. All right, one final call for questions. Okay, if there's no further questions, I'm closing the public hearing. We are now in the regular board meeting, and we have 5 items on our agenda today requiring board action. First item is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on April 26, 2021. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes of April 26, 2021?
So moved. This is Max.
Okay, thank you very much.
Second, Jay.
Okay, it's been moved by Member Sword, Member Tai to accept the minutes as submitted on April 26, 2021. Are there any corrections, notation, amendments, or any other discussion? Okay, here we go. I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, I think we have a unanimous ayes. Is there any nays? Are there any nays opposing the motion? All right, hearing none, we are going to accept the minutes Uh, Thank you very much. It's unanimous. All right, item number 2. This is the approval of the minutes of the budget workshop. May 10th, 2021. I'll call one more time. Mr. Nordstrom, anyone on the telephone to testify?
No one on the phone to testify, Chair.
All right, thank you. Let the record so reflect. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes of the budget workshop meeting held on May 10th, 2021?
So moved, Mr. Chair. This is not.
Thank you, Nalehu.
And I second, this is Kapua.
I'm going to call for, are there any amendments, comments, or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. All right, we are going to accept, the motion carries, and we are going to accept the minutes of the budget workshop held on May 10th, 2021, and it's all right. Item number 3, this is adoption of resolution number 923/2021, adopting the operating capital improvement program budget for the fiscal year 2021-2022 and appropriating funds therefore. Do I have a motion to accept to adopt the resolution?
I move to adopt the resolution. This is Ray.
Yeah, this is Max. I second.
Okay, it's been moved by Member Soon, seconded by Member Sword to accept the resolution. Is there any discussion at this time? Nordstrom, any telephone testimony?
No telephone testimony, Chair.
Okay, I'll let the record so reflect. Given that this is a adoption of budget of both the operating and CIP budget, Madam Secretary, can we do a roll call vote, please?
Vice Chair Kapua.
Aye.
Board Member Ray Soon.
Aye.
Board Member Max Sword.
Aye.
Board Member Nalehu Anthony.
Aye.
Board Member Jay Kutai.
Aye.
Board Member Roger Babcock.
Aye.
Chair Brian Antaya.
Aye.
Chair passes with 7 ayes.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Let the record so reflect. All right, the next item we're going to move on to is item number 4. This is resolution number 924/2021, reaffirming the protection of Oahu's groundwater aquifers from fuel contamination.
Good afternoon, Chair and board members. Erwin Kawata with the Water Quality Division. We have before you this afternoon resolution number 924,2021, reaffirming the protection of Oahu's groundwater aquifers from fuel contamination. The resolution is in response to past releases from the Red Hill Fuel Facility that's owned and operated by the Navy 7 years ago, and a reaffirmation of resolutions passed by this board in 2015. Most recently, in May this month, May 7th, the Navy reported another leak at the Red Hill facility. With the Chair's permission, I'd like to read the resolution for the members of our audience on the live stream.
Go ahead, Mr. Kawata.
Thank you, Chair. The title, Board of Water Supply, City and County of Honolulu, Resolution Number 924,2021, reaffirming the protection of Oahu's groundwater aquifers from fuel contamination. Whereas Oahu's drinking water aquifer is a high-quality, pristine water resource held in trust and to be protected for the benefit of the people pursuant to Article 11, Sections 1 and 7 of the Hawaii State Constitution. And whereas on January 13, 2014, the United States Navy reported a 27,000-gallon leak of jet fuel from its Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. And whereas the Red Hill facility stores more than 180 million gallons of fuel in 20 vintage World War II tanks that are located 100 feet above a sole source aquifer designated by the United States Environmental Protection Agency in 1987 as a major source of drinking water for Oahu residents and visitors. And whereas on May 7, 2021, the Navy reported another leak at the Red Hill facility. And whereas several Navy studies document fuel leaks dating back to 1947, the tank's steel lining are wearing from corrosion, the groundwater underneath the tanks is contaminated with fuel chemicals and risk of large catastrophic fuel releases. And whereas pure water is our greatest need, for the sake of our Keki'okaina, Oahu's groundwater resources should be preserved, kept pristine, and protected now and into the future. And whereas this board adopted resolutions 851-2015 and 860-2015 in February and September 2015 respectively, supporting the installation of tank within a tank secondary containment and no more fuel contamination of Oahu's groundwater now, and therefore be it resolved by the members of the Board of Water Supply, City and County of Honolulu, that this board reaffirms the need to protect and preserve our water resources. And be it further resolved that the board supports the department in taking the measures necessary to protect, defend, and safeguard the groundwater. And be it finally resolved that the members of this board reaffirms to not accept any more fuel contamination of Oahu's groundwater aquifers and urges the Navy to install secondary containment or relocate the fuel away from the groundwater aquifer. That concludes the resolution, Chair and members. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Chair, can I also add some additional information? I just want to update the board too. In the meantime, remember that the first reported leak was back about 7 years ago in January of 2014. Just recently, the Navy reported, it was reported there was another leak at the facility at Red Hill. So the leak in 2014 occurred as they were refilling tank number 5. Even though tank 5 had gone through a period of renovation for about 3 years or so, the recent leak that was reported actually occurred on May 6th. And the point of the leak was not in the tank wall itself, in that 1/4-inch steel plate, but actually in the piping that connects all of these tanks together and brings the fuel from Pearl Harbor or from Pearl Harbor to the tanks. It's pumped up. So in the lower, there are 2 tunnels, the upper tunnel and the lower tunnel. The leak occurred in some piping carrying JP5 fuel from, it may have come from tank number 20, and it actually occurred in the lower access tunnel on a 18-inch diameter pipeline. So that's what, as much as we know right now, the leak, they said the leak occurred at the Fuel Tank Advisory Committee meeting, which was held on May 20th, that from an 18-inch diameter pipeline. And 18 inches is actually not a small pipe. For Board of Water Supply, we consider 16 inches in diameter to be like a transmission main, a major pipeline. So the Navy indicated at the Fuel Tank Advisory Committee meeting last week that at 2 couplings on that pipeline, it sprang a leak. We don't have any details on what type of leak. It's almost like the Navy might have had like a main break, and like we experienced a main break. But they've indicated, I think, publicly to the media that perhaps 1,000 gallons was released of JP5 jet fuel, and they may have recovered about 700 gallons. The leak, from what was reported last week at the Fuel Tank Advisory Committee meeting, was occurred around 6:40 p.m. on May 6th. And from what we've heard during the discussion at the meeting, that the report was transmitted to the Department of Health, possibly verbally, at about 7:30 a.m. the following morning. We also understand from what the Health Department shared during the meeting last week that the vapor monitoring wells or test wells that are drilled under each tank, there's I think a few under each tank, that some of those monitor the vapor levels in those wells might have showed elevated levels after the leak occurred, which indicates the potential for fuel seeping down through the rock and getting into the rock under the tanks, and not staying only in that tunnel. This is as far as we know right now. We've asked for more information, but just so I thought, as you consider this resolution, just know now that there's been another reported leak at the Red Hill facility, but this time from the pipelines that bring that fuel from Pearl Harbor to Red Hill, approximately 3 miles of pipelines. Are any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Max Sword. That begs the question. I don't see in this resolution anything to indicate the infrastructure surrounding the tanks. It just talks about the tanks, but you just mentioned that this leak was not in the tanks, it was on the transmission line.
Connecting pipeline.
Yeah, the transmission line. Now, is there any way we could include that in here, such as ancillary infrastructure, and you can define that with transmission line, pipes, whatever, because from the as you mentioned, from the tank to Pearl Harbor Hickam, it does run underground, and it's, I'm assuming it's if you draw a line from the tank to Pearl Harbor, it runs close to some type of aquifer, or at least.
Good point. Excellent point, Board Member Sword. The entire 20 tanks there at Red Hill basically sits over the around 100 feet above the drinking water aquifer. But that also includes the pipeline, a good portion of, not all of the pipeline, which goes all the way down to Pearl Harbor, but a portion of that pipeline which contains, the fuel helps move the fuel to and from those tanks. That's also over the aquifer. So a leak in the pipelines could also impact the aquifer as much as the tanks.
Is there any way to add that in here, into this resolution?
Maybe, Erwin, what do you think? Suggesting
recommendation, if I may.
Go ahead.
In the third whereas, after the second line, after the word tanks, World War II tanks, we can add and pipelines and appurtenances.
And associated pipelines and infrastructure.
And infrastructure. That's a recommendation in the third whereas. So after the word tanks, we add the words and pipelines and infrastructure that are located 100 feet above the sole source aquifer.
That would try to capture the whole facility.
Yeah, I mean,
that could put our aquifer at risk.
Sure, and bring more specificity to the wording.
Chair, that's a kind of a suggestion from the department for board's consideration if the board is open to that.
Yeah, so is there a motion to accept the resolution as amended?
Do we need that before we discuss further, or?
Yeah.
I have another question.
Okay. A motion and discussion.
So are we still in discussion or not?
We definitely can still discuss. I just wanted to get a motion on the floor, especially if we're gonna have an amendment.
Yeah, since I made the suggestion, I'll make the motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Member Sword to accept the resolution as amended.
I'll second. This is Kapua.
Okay, thank you. Roger?
Okay, so we're still in discussion, yeah. So I think that's a good addition to the whereases. I think we need a little bit of attention on the be it resolved portions. I think the first two are good. They're kind of general. The first one is about need to protect our water resources, and then the second one is similar to that, taking measures to do that. I think the final one, though, is maybe a little to general. So it talks about not accepting more contamination of the aquifers. And, you know, that's it. That's related certainly. But I think, I think maybe the resolution should maybe focus more on fuel leaks instead. So in this case, there was fuel in the past. There's been fuel leaks from tanks, and then now we have from the transmission lines as well. And so it talks about secondary containment, which is I guess we don't specify. So I guess secondary containment, because earlier in the whereas it talks about tank within a tank, so as a form of secondary containment. So I assumes that we're saying that we still support that. But there's also secondary containment or secondary containment of pipes and appurtenances can also be done. So if you're in a like a refinery or other situation like that with chemicals, it's pretty common to have secondary containment of piping. So anyway, I'm just wondering if we should be a little more specific about what we're talking about. I'm not sure that we're not accepting any more fuel contamination of the groundwater. I understand that in a general sense, but I mean, maybe it's fine to leave that, but we're talking about the event is we're talking about leaks, and then we're assuming that of course could lead to contamination. But if we could focus more on the solution, perhaps. I'm not sure. I don't have a specific recommendation for wording, but
yeah, I think what Roger is trying to say is that you know, I mean, we could have a resolution, and I don't think anyone is opposed to it, to the intent, but in the end, it's a resolution. It's we can say we're not going to accept any more leaks, but I suppose we can make that statement. I'm not sure how much we can make that statement stick or to enforce that statement. I don't think we can. I think the intent behind this resolution, correct me if I'm wrong, is to send a message that we wanted to stop. Is that the intent?
Yes, Chair, as she is taking a position, even though we don't have any legal authority over the facility, that's with the regulators, the Department of Health and the US EPA. The position that we're proposing here in the resolution is that we are not really accepting any more fuel contamination in our drinking water aquifer, which is a sole source aquifer for our community. That our position is no more leaks from this facility, that the regulators really should be looking at solutions that will eliminate the possibility of that occurring. So it's a policy position statement of the board. It's non-binding on the Navy or the regulators, but it's make a clear policy statement of the board.
Why, given the resolution that was passed in 2015 and no other position taken by the board, why do you think you need it?
I think right now, and it's a good point, I should have thought of this with the focus has been really on the tanks. And up to, and Erwin and I have been involved with, as a subject matter expert in some of the AOC discussions at Red Hill. It was made clear to us a number of years ago by the regulators that the AOC did not cover the piping systems that connect the facility all the way to Pearl Harbor. They felt it covered mainly the tanks and a short piece of pipe coming out of the bottom of the tanks, but not the entire facility. Last week in the discussion, I specifically asked the Region 9 person for the underground storage tank program, Mr. Steve Lidner, if it did cover the whole facility. And I was happy to hear last week, he said the AOC actually looks at the entire facility because the vulnerabilities we've been really focused on the tanks with the 1/4-inch steel plate that's rusting. But the vulnerabilities could be even greater from the pipelines that are also 78 years old in that facility, the 3 miles of pipelines. They actually have 3 pipelines carrying fuel to and from the tanks. The largest being, I think it's a 32-inch diameter pipe, this 18-inch diameter pipe, and I think the other one was a 12-inch diameter pipe. Together, if you add up all the lengths of pipeline that runs from the tanks to Pearl Harbor, where the fuel is brought in by ship, there may be over 9 miles of pipelines that were installed in the 1940-43 timeframe. So to our understanding, they haven't done any major pipeline replacement there.
Chair, I have a suggestion. I think you're right. I think that most of us are happy to support the intent here. I do think Roger raises some really good points, and I thought the chair, the chief engineer had a really good statement. Wish we could have wrote it down real fast.
The resume. Yeah.
Can we delay this to later on in the meeting and bring it back up and give staff enough time to rewrite a new whereas that we can consider? Instead of us trying to wordsmith it right here.
We can do that.
Yeah, I would agree to that, or even unless you guys needed this meeting, just propose something for next meeting.
Yeah, Ernie just mentioned during the course of the meeting, they could have something for us at the end of this meeting to get it out, especially with the latest leak being fresh in everybody's mind. So if he's willing to do that, then I suggest, as Ray said, to just put it to the end of the agenda, and we could get this out in a timely manner.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If the board so pleases, we'd be glad to take a stab at it. I'll ask Erwin to work on some proposed amendments to this resol for board consideration, perhaps later in the meeting.
Okay, let's pass this item, and then let's move on to the next item. We'll move this item either to the end of the regular today after items for information, or be at the very, very end of it after executive session. All right, thank you. Item number 5. So the title here is to determine the role of the board in staffing and succession planning and creation of a permitted interaction group pursuant to HRS 92-2.5. Here, let me just clarify what the intent was here. As you all know, in executive session for the last meetings, we've been talking about succession planning with respect to not so much about just the role of the position of the man, options, in terms of that position. This is written much broader than that. It seems like it's succession planning, and I know there was a comment earlier about advice regarding the broader staffing of the department. I just want to make clear where the intent originally was in this, that we discussed in executive session, that it is for the position of the manager. Now, we can have a discussion whether the role, the scope of work expanded, or to keep it as it was intended. They're obviously very different. So before I accept the motion, is there any discussion?
Chair, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I agree with you. I think our first concern was the manager's position, as we discussed. And we wanted to have a pig to really get down deep into that subject. But I also understand, I mean, it's one of our biggest concerns is the staffing issues of the whole department. They may be two different subjects, but they're also both important. So maybe you need two pigs, or maybe you need it to perform in sequential order. We take one and then we take the other issue. I don't know.
Yeah, I would be open to that. I just wanted to clarify this so that nobody feels like it was kind of sprung in here at the last moment. But you're exactly right, Member Soon. Personnel are planning for the future of the department, and personnel has been an ongoing concern for years now. I would definitely be open to perhaps I think maybe your second suggestion of looking at the position of the manager and then looking to see whether and to the extent to which the pig can address issues with respect to the broader staffing of the department. But I just wanted to clarify that, make sure.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is not Honolulu. I wanted to maybe just add something in and on top of what Ray was talking about. I think that the general idea of investigating what we can set as pay across the manager's salary might also give us some opportunities to dig into what engineers might be getting as well, who aren't necessarily in leadership positions, but just general engineers to help move some of the CIP along. I know I think it was the previous meeting, there was a mention that some of the reason why the CIP wasn't as high was just because you couldn't push the work through with respect to making sure that the planning was done in an orderly fashion at the board. So I do believe that this is something that maybe ties together and looking at what some of these rates might be as a whole, but also that this is something I would just cackle what Member Soon said, that this is something that we do need to look at and is a priority.
Okay. Yep. Thank you very much, Nalihu. I think we do have a consent. It sounds like we have a consensus. If anyone else wants to weigh in, but it seems a consensus is that this permitted interaction group will address both succession planning, both at the manager level, which under the charter is one of our primary functions as the board, as well as look into, to the extent that we can, because there are labor law related issues, collective bargaining issues, to the extent we can, the broader personnel challenges that we're having at the department level. It sounds like that's the consensus.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Is there a motion then to accept, let's see here. Is there a motion to
Hey, Chair.
establish a permitted
Chair,
group? Sorry, is someone trying to say something?
I just wanted to say I was going to help you out because you're breaking up. I so move. This is Ray.
This is Max, second.
Okay, thank you for the assist. We have a motion to establish a permitted interaction group with respect to both the manager's position as well as to the extent we're able to the department's personnel challenges. Is there any further discussion? Okay, if not, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Okay, we have a unanimous vote to establish this PIG pursuant to HRS 92.2.5B to determine the role of the board in staffing and succession planning of the manager as well as the department.
Chair,
Yes,
this is Ernie. I'm sorry to ask the question, but I believe you would have to, the board would have to decide who would be participating on the PIG, Permanent Interaction Group. I think the statute allows less than a majority, so that would be up to 3 members, because we have a 7-member board, a majority would be 4 members. And I believe it'd be at most 3 members on the board.
yes. Members of the board, please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to volunteer anybody. I believe the discussion at the executive committee, last executive committee meeting was, or executive session meeting was chair, vice chair, and Nalehu. But if there are any volunteers at this point, I'm sure we could substitute you in.
Can I say something? This is
Sure.
Ray. I think that's a really good idea, and I think that's a good 3 members. That might have been a recommendation, but we have to vote on it here, right? So I move to amend the resolution that was just accepted to add those 3 names in particular to serve on the PIG.
This is Max, I second.
Okay. Any discussion? Moved and seconded. All right. All those in favor to establish the PIG as discussed, naming the members of the PIG, chair, vice chair, and board member Anthony. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. All right. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to items for information. The first is Mr. Barry Usagawa, Program Administrator, Water Resources Division, with the status update of groundwater level at all indexations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So there are 2 aquifer index stations in low groundwater status for April. Still Honolulu and Wailua in caution. And the average production was 132.8 million gallons per day. That's still under our average of 145 for the year. Usually the rainfall index was 63% in April, and the 5-month moving average is 127%. So as long as the 5-month moving average is over 100, the aquifer levels are usually high. The National Weather Service is forecasting below normal precipitation for the coming summer months. And we are starting to see some decreasing in head levels because of it's getting warmer and pumping is increasing because of the decreased rainfall as well. But overall, still in fairly good shape. And that's my report. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Barry, I know I probably asked this question before, but it amazes me that Honolulu still, on the windward side of the island, that gets a lot of water, is still at that low level. Right?
It's just at the top of the caution. It's not an alert to critical.
No, I know, but it's, considering the amount of rain it gets on that side of the island, that's kind of low. The second question I have is, I drove down Kinaus a couple of, I pass by there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that a couple of the condos are, and this is like 11 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock, the sun is up, they're watering their grass. Are we in anticipation to the the forecast being, you know, low rainfall.
Yeah.
Is there a certain time where, you know, we try to get these people to avoid watering in the middle of the day?
Right, it's usually an advisory. When we start getting into the alert low groundwater status, when water levels are really low, that's when they're potentially more aggressive touches and not really enforcement, but reminders. In the summer months, I think we start our conservation messaging, so it should be starting up. And yeah, you're right. Irrigation before 9 or after 5 p.m. is recommended, not in the hot of the day, especially as it's getting hotter. There's more evaporation and less water getting to the plants. So yeah.
Yeah, I just thought maybe having a more proactive stance, you know, to do that. Because I mean, I passed by and this lady's talking to somebody and the water hose is like this, you know. I mean.
Yeah.
If you let us know the properties, then I'll ask communications to follow up.
We have calls all the time about people letting water from their sprinkler system run down the sidewalk into the gutter. So anticipation for a drier than normal summer, we'll be ramping up our voluntary requests for conservation from our customers.
And we do public service announcements and so forth.
Yeah, we do other ways to try to get out to our customers.
Do we get cooperation from the TV stations and? Or we got to pay them to say that?
Well, in the past we had to use advertising funds actually to pay for time on the station to send the messages out, like during the news.
Yeah.
So we'll have to kind of look at that. PSAs, you know, something we can look at also that are maybe free through the radio is another way to get the message out. But we'll be trying to push more conservation requests for conservation.
I'm just curious on how, you know, what.
We do use a variety of means to reach out, including social media to our customers.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And the water commission heads helps us with it's called the Oahu Drought Committee, and they're planning a meeting in June where we get the forecast from the National Weather Service and all the large water users meet to talk about the season and then any particular issues of concern, and we can fold that into our messaging as well.
And actually, the current chair is it you, Barry? You're the chair of the drought committee?
The co-chair with Jason Shitanishi from the Food and USDA. Yeah. So yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? If not, thank you very much for the report. Next item. Item for information is Mr. Jason Nakaido, Assistant Program Administrator, Field Operations Division, with a water main repair report for April 2021.
Hey, good afternoon, Chair and Board members. This is the water main repair report for April 2021. There were 27 main breaks in April for a total of 292 for the fiscal year. For main size 4 to 12 inches, the average repair time was 15 hours. The leak detection team investigated 21 miles of pipeline and found 82 leaks, 76 of which were coupling leaks. That concludes the report. Are there any questions?
Members?
Jason, do you expect that, given the initiative to replace more lines and and with the advanced leak detection that you guys are doing now, that come next year we're gonna see basically lower level of leaks occurring? Or Are we constantly treading, should we expect to constantly be treading water? I guess I was hoping to see us have on average fewer and fewer leaks, but that's not correct.
Yvette, if I could take a stab at answering that question. With the water master plan, what we projected when they did some modeling of the leak trend as pipelines get replaced, especially as we replaced maybe the first 200 or so critical miles that have been suffering a lot of breaks, that initially we would still see a rise in main breaks until we started to replace enough of the system to make a difference. But over time, as the program matures, then we'll see actually a decrease to under 300 and maybe 250 range over, and sustain that over time, replacing at 21 miles. So initially, we're not going to see, I think, a big drop in, we might still even see an increase. What we're trying to do is hold it like stable, because we've only been in the program now for a few years. And we're getting to 10 miles a year now, and then gradually ramping up a mile or two each. So it'll take a little while to see the results. So it's not an immediate thing because of the amount of pipe we got to actually replace.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
But adding.
I was.
Yeah, we're not going to be around to see the benefits.
Neither will I. Neither will I. But it's an investment for our future generations. So we got to do what we got to do. Okay. Thank you.
By adding to what the manager said, the leak detection work too will also help to decrease the number of leaks we see, because we do see some of the leaks on actual mains, so we're fixing them before they become actual breaks.
And hopefully with Mr. Nikaido being around to actually see this to fruition.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, he's still young looking, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. Are we ready for?
Yes, it is being printed and we'll be here shortly.
So I have a printout. Ellen should be emailing it to the rest of the board members.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joy.
Would you guys like to take this up now, or do you guys want to take it up after executive session?
Maybe it's better to, Chair, if I could suggest, I'm not a board member, but better to maybe try to take this up now, and we anticipate the executive sessions might be a little longer.
Okay, let's see. I'll check our emails then.
Okay.
Yeah, plus I think we're just dealing with the whereas, yeah?
Right.
I mean, be it resolved.
And just confirming, so the email will come from Joy?
It's coming, I believe, from Ellen.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, Ellen, can you contact Erwin to ask him to come in here? The changes seem to be mostly in the last, be it finally resolved. The members of the board reaffirmed the unacceptability of additional fuel contamination of Oahu's groundwater aquifers by the Navy's facility, and urges the Navy to install comprehensive measures to both prevent and contain future spills within tanks and appurtenances via secondary containment, or relocate the fuel away from the groundwater aquifer.
Chair, I have a question. This is Kapua.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Ernie, I also just wanted to clarify, I believe Erwin had also, Max had suggested, and Erwin was going to incorporate one edit to the third whereas clause after the World War II tanks with respect to
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
It says in the third whereas the Red Hill facility contains more than 180 million gallons of fuels in 20 vintage World War II tanks and pipelines and infrastructure that are located 100 feet above the sole source aquifer. So it does now kind of broaden it. Thank you.
I think though what she's saying is, in that last be it resolved, can we do tanks and pipelines? And I mean, I realize the pertinence is.
We can actually list it out.
Why don't we just use what?
Board member Suoni, you're suggesting after the word tanks, maybe comma, pipelines, and other appurtenances via secondary containment. So adding after the word future spills from tanks, after that phrase, comma, pipelines, and adding the word other appurtenances via secondary containment, or to relocate the fuel away from the groundwater aquifer.
So just to clarify, this is Kapua again. My suggestion and question was with respect to the third whereas clause, not with respect to the be it finally resolved.
Okay, right.
The folks online still don't have a copy of the reso. I can't see it, but what Ernie read was fine with me in principle.
Erwin, could you read the third whereas?
The third whereas, okay.
Yeah,
I'll go over it again. Whereas the Red Hill facility contains more than 180 million gallons of fuel in 20 vintage World War II tanks and pipelines and infrastructure that are located 100 feet above a sole source aquifer designated by the United States Environmental Protection Agency in 1987 as a sole source of drinking water for Oahu residents and visitors.
Major source.
Major source. Correction. Yes, thank you. Major source. So I added the word contains, Red Hill facility contains, and then I added the pipelines and infrastructure in the second line.
Good. So as a matter of correct grammar, would that be a comma after World War II tanks, the comma, pipelines and infrastructure?
Okay,
As opposed to adding and?
okay,
Because then that way you can add that at the end if you want to.
Right.
In the
Okay.
final resolve, you can add the same.
Tanks,
comma,
pipeline,
yeah.
and infrastructure.
Infrastructure, yeah. That'd be consistent.
So the last whereas, Erwin, maybe you can read the last whereas with that change?
okay. The last paragraph, be it finally resolved that the members of this board reaffirm the unacceptability of additional fuel contamination of Oahu's groundwater aquifers by the Navy's facility and urges the Navy to install comprehensive measures to both prevent and contain future spills from tanks, comma, and appurtenances via secondary,
Pipelines
comma, pipelines.
and infrastructure.
And infrastructure,
Instead of appurtenances, infrastructure.
just to be consistent.
Okay,
By the way, I just received the resolution by email.
Okay, Chair, we made a few more adjustments in the meantime.
so the last, be it finally resolved, it will say, both prevent and contain future spills from tanks, comma, pipelines and appurtenances, and infrastructure
Yeah.
via secondary containment or to relocate the fuel away from the groundwater aquifer, period.
Yeah.
Chair, if I could make an observation, I think conventional fuel facilities right now, the requirement is for pipelines to have secondary containment and not be a single wall pipeline. So I applaud the board for these changes.
Okay, unless anybody has any objection, I'm going to call for the question. All right, all those in favor of resolution number 924, 2021, reaffirming the protection of Oahu's groundwater aquifers from fuel contamination as amended during this meeting, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. All right, the motion passes unanimously. That brings us to the end of our regular agenda. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So move. This is Kapua.
Second, Son Alehu.
Thank you very much, Kapua and Alehu, respectively. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. We're going to now move into executive session. We stand in recess. Okay, that brings us to the close of this meeting. I want to just thank everyone today for their patience and for their time. To all of the board members, Lau, BWS staff, especially Barry, thank you so much for your hard work on the different issues that we talked about today. Really appreciate that. This concludes the meeting of the board. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Okay, it's been moved by Member Sword, seconded by Member Putai to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 Say nay. All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much again. We'll see you all next month.